Hey, it's Joe Winberg, and I hope you well know that it's Joe Winberg, and this should be Bluebird Semaphore. And I've been procrastinating putting another world history for ordinary people, and this would be 12. It is 12, but I've been having some difficulties with YouTube. And I have certain uh, initiatives out there trying to fix it for me. So, we'll see how that goes. And hopefully it goes. And if it doesn't, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I'm really committed to this world history thing. I'm not in the piano playing and the art thing. I'd love to continue doing that too, and certainly promoting the other artists. But you can't control what's going on in this world. The other folks control it. I don't. So when they came at me and said, you gotta do this and you gotta do that, well, I didn't listen, and I'm still not listening. So I'll see what these other queries that I've asked to look into this for me come up with, and we'll see what's happening. I mean, I've already thought to myself that there might be other ways of doing this, so we'll see. But anyway, going back to world history for the ordinary people, this would be session 12. And I think that for the most part, Poland and the Reformation are going to have to be declared done. Although I would like to mention that there was a Polish count who in Australia, I believe in the 19th century, was very livid about what was being done to the Aborigines in Australia. It seems to me that everywhere there was the denial of human rights and the expected respect treated to all humans, wherever that was being kicked in the teeth, there was a Polish count of one type or another that would come up and look to defend them. So, kudos to the Polish people and their counts who defended the rights of man. But I haven't really, the library is still shut down solid, and I don't want to depend on the internet. It's just not me, I will go as a second resource after I've gotten the first information. Then I'll go to the libraries. Then I'll go to the internet. Anyway, so one of the areas that I will eventually probably look into world history will be China, and I may have mentioned this already. I think I already put the book up in front of you. East Asia or the Far East, a history. Three, what looks like Harvard professors put this book together, basically almost a textbook, a historical textbook. And I started reading that, and and I have to say at the outgo here that I've done, based on the average person's life, I've done more than what the average person would do as far as reading Chinese history and facts about the Chinese, so that it doesn't strike me as unusual that this would be one of the avenues I would follow in world history for ordinary people. The one problem being that it's such a gigantic task that, I feel that perhaps, how will I bring this all together? However, there's one thing when you come to the history of China that could make this a much more simpler task, is that the Chinese civilization has been one civilization for, as far as I'm concerned, up to 4,000 years, 3,000, 4,000, give or take 1,000 years, because they didn't change. They are today who they were 800 BC. Same form of government, same ideals, same convictions that they have for themselves. These are a people who do not change their ideologies, and only in very not meaningful ways do they ever look different, one dynasty to the next. But come to my rescue, I can't believe this, my wife, my lovely wife, has put a professor in front of me who was her professor at the Penn State. And she said she's on YouTube, she's retired, okay? And I listened to one of her lectures. And this is after she retired from Penn State. So I don't know if you can see this, but her name is Claire Hirschfield. You can see that, right? Now the YouTube video that I watched is United States and China, Love, Hate, and Rivalry. And that one's on YouTube. It's only an hour or so long. Some of the others seem perhaps longer. I don't know. But this one was very good because it more or less crossed the T's and dotted the I's for much of what I had been reading about China. And if you've been watching the Bluebird Semaphore, you know that I did the Silk Road Project, which was the paintings that I dreamed up of Marco Polo's trip to the Great Khan in 1270 or thereabout, for 17 years, and he lived among them. And I called it the Silk Road Project. So, thinking about that, and this is just kind of like an aside, if I can get this YouTube thing going again, I would like to do a project, and it would be called the Age of Exploration. And why? Because I've already done one painting, and I'll try to show it to you, if you can see it. If you could see that. Okay, it's supposed to be like a galleon of those days, the days of Vasco da Gama, Magellan, Columbus, and all those dudes. However, what's not clear to me, and it will become clear, is which age of discovery are we talking about? Are we talking about the age of Vasco da Gama, Magellan, Balboa, Columbus, or are we talking about the age of Cook and Bly and Darwin? Which age of discovery are we talking about? So I'll have to get that down, and I'll have to make my paintings represent the age of exploration that I would assume then that everybody is focusing on. Because that's quite a distance. That's like 200 years between Da Gama and Cook. And what I can tell you at the outset of that, before we go any further, is that the original guys, the Da Gamas and the Balboas and the Columbus, these guys were some horrible human beings. The atrocities that they heaped on the Aboriginal people in the places that they went to means, in my estimation, my opinion, their names should be struck from all history books. All history books. Young people should be taught in the following manner. Explorer A went up on a rise one day and saw an ocean. Explorer B went around the Cape of Good Hope and went into India. And don't describe what he did when he went into India. Their names should be stricken from the history books for all eternity. And I just can't believe what they did. And I have a book that I'm reading to thank for this knowledge, and it's simply called Around the Horn, I think that's the name of the book. The young man who wrote this seems to be an adventurer, a sailor, perhaps a well-educated individual, because he certainly writes with a great deal of knowledge of history. And I'm really thrilled because I have sorted out the old problem of, is there such a thing as the Southern Ocean? Well, indeed there is. And the oceans of the world, the ocean and the water that goes between Australia and the Cape of Good Hope, 7,000 miles of open ocean, north of the Antarctica, mostly 50 degrees latitude and less, is the Southern Ocean. And what an ocean it is. And this fellow who wrote this book, Around the Horn, has brought that to my attention. It has some of the worst weather in the world. He introduced me to a term called fetch. Fetch is the unbroken path of water and wind between land masses that would get in its way. And that's what makes the Southern Ocean all the way over to the Falklands, all the way over to Cape Horn, such a difficult journey. Now, stay with me here for a while. The fetch is a nautical term that will be used by sailors to kind of try to understand what they're getting into. But the long and the short of it is, they were looking, of course, for the passage to get them over to the Spice Islands so they could take whatever they wanted from those places. And finally, Magellan found that Straits of Magellan that put him through the bottom of Patagonia and Argentina. And as far as I'm concerned, quite a ways before you got to Cape Horn. So in a way, he cheated. And he gets into the Pacific, and then he goes on and on and on. And the this is all in a way of actually adding to some of the information I'm trying to gather about the other project, why the war in the Pacific became the war in the Pacific. Because certainly these dudes going out, discovering these new ways to get to the Spice Islands, was prior to this. Essentially, Portuguese had Portugal had had taken this as their own private realm. And I would say that the Spanish were perhaps in there a little bit, but it was pretty much Portuguese. And then Magellan, they had this, the Pope split the earth in half and said, Portugal, you got this, Spain, you got that. And Magellan, because he had been in Malay, the Malay Peninsula, he says, wait a second. This line that the Pope drew up is giving the Spice Islands to Spain. Let me go talk to Spain and tell them that I know how I could make them a fortune. And they heard what he had to say, and they gave the money and the boats and the ships, and off he went on his on his explorations. But be that as it may, I'm telling you, these people's names should be struck from the history books because of the horrible, horrible treatment of the original people in every country they went to. Horrible. And let me tell you now, 2 weeks back, I was confused that there was a slight reference to some atrocities that maybe could be placed at the feet of Europeans. And I said, I never heard of Europeans doing that. Well, I've lost that thought. That thought is gone. The Europeans did everything unimaginable to other people that you have read that these horrible people did and these horrible people did. The Europeans did it all. So the names of those first explorers in the 15th century, their names should be struck from the history books, and no young people in schools today should ever hear the name Balboa, Magellan, Vasco da Gama, Perez, or whatever his name was, in Lima, the Incas. All these names struck, and perhaps in 100 years, 150 years, no one would know who those people are. They would know that somebody from this country went to that country and they did this, that, and the other thing. But they wouldn't know the names. Because one of the things these people wanted, who went exploring, is they wanted fame. They wanted fame. What an ugly thing. These people were the worst of the worst. Let me stop preaching. Now let me get back to Claire Hirschfeld in her much more orderly, much more civilized, much more to the point lectures on China, although I've only listened to one so far. But she certainly has the knowledge, and all the knowledge is at her fingertips where it needs to be, not locked up in some notebook. But she has it, and she is more or less telling you that China has always been China. China is not a country of revolutions. China doesn't try to change the world. China rebels. If a dynasty doesn't get its act together, in 100 or 200 years, the peasants, the peasant farmers, they will carry out the mandate of heaven, and they will rebel, and they will bring up an organic leader from within their faction of the civilization. They will bring up someone, and they will put down the current regime who has in 1 or 200 or 300 or 400 years started to debase the civilization. And they feel they have every right to do that rebellion. But it's not revolution, which is another way of saying that the way they think today, because there hasn't been a revolution, is exactly the way they were thinking at 1800 BC. And this, my good friend, is an extraordinary concept, because that gives them a leg up on the rest of us who are trying to struggle with our new beginnings. I'm telling you, we really need to be concerned and watch what's going on, you know? But Claire will give you a much better understanding of this, and she has multiple YouTube videos. I haven't seen them all, but I hope I will. Quite frankly, I'm not very concerned, because whatever happens, it'll probably happen in like in 50 years, and I'll probably be dead. So, I mean, other than I should be concerned about posterity and that my grandchild lives in a peaceful, meaningful world and so on and so forth. But I also understand that I have no control over those sorts of things. I don't. I have nothing that can reach out and make things better. You know, regardless of what these people say all over that. You matter. Oh, you matter. No, you don't matter. Okay? The only thing that matters are the guys on the top. They matter. And China, the only thing that matters is their civilization, and that the rest of us are barbarians. We don't know what we're doing, and they're going to win, according to them. I'm not saying they are. But in their minds, they will be the eventual winners, no matter what happens. But that being said, that's not why I want to look at the history of the East, the Far East, and what have you. You know, it's always been intriguing. They have beautiful art forms. They have, I don't want to say that they have great science, because I really don't think they do. But, you know, even their literature is mediocre at best. But I think that their art form is certainly one of the best, and their civilization, as powerful as it is and was, has to be one that you would admire and want to learn more of. So maybe that's where I'll go with the world history for ordinary people. Although I have to tell you, there's so many interesting things. Like, who knows what'll be next, you know? But I'll keep trying to come at this world history thing until the YouTube thing gets resolved, and maybe I'll go back to doing other things, like the piano and the painting, and put it all up there. Who knows? But for now, just let me say, this particular session of World History for Ordinary People, number 12. Thanks for listening. And if I've forgotten anything, I'll remember to bring it to your attention next time. Okay? Thanks. Bye-bye.